I'm 81 years old, and my own son won't visit me. Not because he's busy, because I drove him away. I was married to Walter Hutchins for 54 years. Good man, patient man. And I spent most of that marriage turning into the kind of woman people tiptoe around and talk about in the car on the ride home. After Walter died, my daughter Diane sat me down and told me exactly what I'd become. She named the habits nobody else had the courage to name. There were 8 of them, and I'm going to tell you every single one. It's a Wednesday morning, and I'm sitting at this kitchen table. Walter built this table, 1978, oak. Sanded it himself, sealed it twice because he said the first coat wasn't even enough. I've eaten every meal at this table for 46 years. Balanced my checkbook here every month in pencil. Same chair, same routine. The difference is the silence. The silence used to have water in it, his newspaper, his coffee, the way he'd clear his throat before saying something he thought was funny. Now the silence is just silence. And the phone on the counter hasn't rung in 3 days. I used to blame that on the world, on my children being too busy, on people not caring about old women the way they used to. I blamed it on everything and everyone, except the one person sitting at this table, me. If you're a woman over 65 and you've noticed the phone rings less than it used to, and you've been telling yourself it's everyone else's fault, I need you to stay with me. My name is Gloria Mae Hutchins. I'm 81 years old. I was married to Walter Dean Hutchins for 54 years. He's been gone 4 years now, heart failure. And in the 4 years since he died, I have managed to push away nearly every person who ever loved me. Not because of grief, because of habits, ugly ones. The kind nobody tells you about because they don't want to hurt your feelings. The kind your family whispers about in the car on the way home from visiting you. I'm going to name 8 of them. Not habits I read about in some magazine. Habits I lived. Habits that almost cost me my children. And the only reason I'm sitting here telling you this is because 18 months ago, my daughter Diane sat me down in my living room and told me the truth. The whole truth. The kind of truth that makes you want to throw up because you know every word of it is right. So let's start. The first one is the one nobody wants to hear. Chronic complaining. About your body, about your aches, about every pain, every pill, every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night. Turning your own decay into the only conversation you know how to have. Now, I need to tell you about my mother, Ruth Ann Caulfield. Thanksgiving, 1981. I was 36 years old. Walter and I drove the kids down to Thomasville to eat at her house. My mother had cooked a beautiful turkey, set the table with her good china, and from the moment we sat down, she talked about her hip, her digestion, the pills that weren't working, the doctor who didn't listen, the new pain in her shoulder that she was sure was something terrible. My children, Diane was 11, Bobby was 8, sat there with their forks frozen, staring at their plates, while their grandmother described her bowel problems in detail I will not repeat. I drove home that night and I said to Walter, I will never be that woman. Walter looked at the road and said, I know you won't, Gloria. He believed me. I believed me. Fast forward 40 years. Every phone call to Diane started the same way. My back, my knees, my blood pressure, the new medication and its side effects, the weather making my joints worse. I didn't ask about her life. I didn't ask about the grandchildren. I opened my mouth and my mother came out. Every time I opened my mouth, it was a complaint. My back, my knees, the weather, the neighbours. I made my own body the only thing I talked about. And then I wondered why nobody wanted to listen. Diane stopped calling on Tuesdays, our standing call. Every Tuesday since she moved out in 1988. And when she stopped, I didn't notice for a month. A month. That's how deep inside my own misery I was. Now here's what I understand about Ruth Ann that I didn't understand at that Thanksgiving table. She wasn't trying to ruin the meal. She was 71 years old. She lived alone. Her body was the loudest thing in her life, and complaining about it was the only way she knew to say, I'm still here. I'm still a person. Notice me. I understand that now, but understanding it didn't stop me from repeating it. Your body is falling apart. I know that. Mine is too. But if you make your body the headline of every conversation, people stop reading. They do. They love you and they stop reading. And then you're Ruth Ann at the Thanksgiving table, wondering why everyone's looking at their plates. Number 2, and this one cuts deeper. Holding grudges that should have been in the ground decades ago. In 1989, Diane had a school play. She was 16. She'd been rehearsing for weeks, some role in Our Town. I don't even remember which one, but she was proud of it. She told Walter about it 3 times, wrote the date on the calendar in the kitchen, circled it. Walter went fishing with his brother Carl instead. He apologized that night, said Carl had been going through a rough spell and needed the company, said he was sorry, said he'd make it up to Diane. I said, it's fine, Walter. It was not fine. I held that grudge for 22 years. 22 years. I filed it away in my head with every other time Walter chose something else over his family. The fishing trip. The time he forgot our anniversary in '94. The way he fell asleep during Bobby's first baseball game. I had a mental filing cabinet, organized, detailed. I could pull any slight from any decade and lay it on the table like evidence in a courtroom. In 2011, Walter was 73. We were sitting right here at this table. I don't even remember what started it. Something small, the way it always is. And I brought up the play. 1989. Diane's play. Walter looked at me across this table and said, Gloria, I don't even remember that. I wanted to scream, because I remembered every detail. The empty seat in the 3rd row, Diane scanning the audience, the way she found me and smiled, but the smile was looking for someone who wasn't there. I remembered all of it, and Walter didn't remember any of it. Here's what I know now. A grudge is a story you tell yourself so many times it becomes more real than the person standing in front of you. I was so busy remembering what Walter got wrong in 1989 that I forgot to notice what he was getting right in 2011. Every single day. The man drove me to every doctor's appointment, fixed every creaking door in this house, brought me tea without being asked. And I was still sitting in that auditorium, staring at his empty chair. Walter wasn't careless. He made a choice that day, a bad one. But he lived the next 25 years trying to show up, and I wouldn't let him. Because I was keeping score on a game he didn't know he was still playing. Number 3. Refusing to bend. Now this is the one I need you to hear, because this is the habit that has a body count. I don't mean that literally, I mean it kills something. It kills the willingness of the people around you to even try. 2012. Piggly Wiggly parking lot. Walter and I had just finished the grocery shopping. Same list we'd been buying for 30 years. Same brands, same order on the shelves. I had the routine memorized. Walter knew not to deviate. But that day, in the coffee aisle, Walter picked up a bag of something different, some brand with a red label. He held it up and said, "What about this one? Might be good." And I said, and I can still hear myself saying it, "We've bought the same coffee for 30 years, Walter." He didn't argue. He just put the can back. And something behind his eyes closed like a door. 2 years later he was gone, and I never bought a different coffee, not once. Because by then it was too late for it to matter. That's what stubbornness does. It makes you think you're strong. It makes you think knowing what you want is a virtue. But what it actually does is tell the people around you that their ideas, their preferences, their small attempts to introduce something new into your life, none of it matters. You have decided, and they can either fall in line or stop trying. Walter stopped trying. It wasn't just coffee, it was the route to church, the brand of paper towels, where we sat in the restaurant, always the same booth, always. How the dishwasher was loaded. I had a way for everything, and any deviation felt like an attack on the order I'd built. I called it knowing what works. My children called it something else. Bobby said it to me once at his son's 5th birthday party in Charlotte, 2008. I'd spent the first hour criticizing the decorations, the food, the fact that the children were running unsupervised. Bobby pulled me into the hallway and said, "Mom, can you just enjoy something for once?" I told him he was being sensitive. He didn't invite me to the next birthday. Walter stopped bringing home flowers because I'd complained they weren't the right kind. Stopped trying to surprise me because I'd made surprise feel like a threat. He retreated to his workshop in the garage, and I told myself he was avoiding me. But he wasn't avoiding me. He was protecting himself from the word no that lived in my mouth like a reflex. I was so afraid of things being different that I made sure nothing could ever get better. Number 4. Playing the victim. Now this one, I need you to be honest with yourself about this one. Because every woman I know over 70 has done some version of it, including me. especially me. I had a best friend named Patsy Greer. Patsy and I met at First Baptist in 1995. We started having lunch together once a month at the Cracker Barrel on Highway 68. Every month for over 20 years. Same booth by the window. She'd get the chicken and dumplings. I'd get the country fried steak. We'd sit for 2 hours. And somewhere along the way, I can't tell you the exact year because it crept in the way these things do, those lunches became my performance, my one-woman show of everything wrong in my life. My ungrateful children, Walter's silence, my body betraying me, the world getting worse, the neighbours who didn't wave anymore. Every lunch, Patsy sat across from me and I unloaded everything. I wasn't looking for advice. I wasn't looking for solutions. I was looking for an audience. 2 years ago, a Tuesday, the Cracker Barrel, same booth. Patsy put down her fork, looked at me and said, "Gloria, I can't do this anymore. Every time we sit down, you complain about your children, your back, the world. I leave here feeling worse than when I came." She paid her half of the check, pushed her chair back, and walked out. I sat in that booth for another 20 minutes, alone. And you know what I thought? I thought, how could she do this to me? Not, what have I been doing to her? Not, is she right? My first thought, my very first thought, was to make myself the victim of the conversation where someone finally told me the truth. That's what this habit does. It rewires your brain. Every piece of honesty becomes an attack. Every consequence becomes something that was done to you. You sit in the wreckage of your own choices and you point at everyone walking away and you say, "See? See how they treat me." I called myself a victim so many times I forgot I was the one holding the scissors. Cutting people out with my own misery and then weeping about being alone. Patsy never called again. I still eat at the Cracker Barrel sometimes. Different booth now. That one by the window, I can't sit there. Now, everything I've told you so far, the complaining, the grudges, the stubbornness, the self-pity, I thought those were just bad habits, personality quirks, the cost of getting old. I thought everyone dealt with some version of this. Then my daughter sat me down, and I found out exactly what it had cost me. And it was worse than anything I'd imagined. Number 5, criticizing everyone's choices. And this is the one that nearly took my children from me. It was a Sunday afternoon, 18 months ago. Diane drove down from Greensboro the way she does every couple of weeks. But this time she didn't bring the grandchildren. She came alone. And when she walked in, she didn't go to the kitchen to make coffee the way she usually does. She sat down in the living room, on the edge of the couch, hands in her lap. I knew something was wrong. A mother knows, even a bad mother knows. She said, "Mama, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." And I, because this is who I was, I said, "Well, that sounds ominous." She didn't laugh. "Mama, I love you, but I dread coming here, and Bobby won't come at all. You need to hear why." That sentence, those words, I have replayed them every single day for 18 months. I dread coming here. My daughter, my firstborn, the girl I rocked to sleep, drove to school, watched walk down the aisle. She dreaded coming to my house. Diane was calm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She'd rehearsed this, I could tell. She'd thought about what to say and how to say it, the way you do when you've been building up to something for years. She listed it out. Every holiday where I'd criticized the food someone else brought. Every visit where I told her how to discipline her own children. The time I rearranged her kitchen cabinets while she was at work. The time I told Bobby's wife, Angela, that the pot roast was dry, at Angela's own table, in front of her family. And then Diane said something that broke me open. Bobby told me he can't be in this house for 2 hours without feeling like he's 14 again, and nothing he does is good enough. He said that, Mama. Your son said that. I didn't hear my son's voice. I heard it through my daughter's, and it was worse that way. Because Diane was delivering a message Bobby couldn't bring himself to deliver in person. He'd given up on me hearing it from him. I sat in that chair, Walter's chair, the one by the window, and I didn't say anything. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a response. I didn't have a defense. I didn't have a, well, I was just trying to help. I just sat there and let my daughter's words land like stones. You're still listening. And I think it's because you recognize something. Maybe you've said those words, I'm just trying to help. Maybe you've rearranged someone's kitchen, corrected how they're raising their children, told them what they're doing wrong because you've lived longer and you know better. Maybe your children have stopped arguing with you, and you think that means you won. It doesn't. It means they gave up. Trust me, that's so much worse. I thought I was helping. Every criticism, every correction, every pointed comment about how things should be done, I thought I was improving their lives. I thought my experience entitled me to an opinion on everything. I never once asked myself, who was I improving this for? Not for them, for me. Because controlling how everyone else lived was easier than looking at how I was living. And it took my daughter sitting on that couch, shaking, telling me the truth she'd been carrying for years. It took that to make me see it. Number 6. Keeping score. This one I'm almost ashamed to say out loud, but I said I'd be honest with you, and I meant it. I kept a list in my head of everything I did for that family. Every meal I cooked, every load of laundry I folded, every school event I attended alone because Walter was working. Every time I gave up something I wanted so the family could have what it needed. I tracked all of it, catalogued it, and I held it over them like a debt they could never repay. After everything I've done for this family, I said that so many times they could mouth the words before I finished. I used my sacrifices like a credit card, and the interest rate was guilt. Nobody could ever do enough. Bobby sent flowers on Mother's Day, wrong flowers. Diane called every Tuesday, not long enough. Walter provided for 54 years, but he didn't say thank you enough. The debt was designed to be impossible. I see that now. I designed it that way because as long as they owed me, I had power. As long as I was the martyr, I was the center. My mother did the same thing. Ruth Ann kept score until the day she died. She could tell you every sacrifice she made in 1958 and how the world never paid her back. She died with a list of everything life owed her. She collected on none of it. I was turning into Ruth Ann again, And this time, it wasn't about my body. It was about my ledger. Now here is the part that hollowed me out. After Walter died 4 years ago, Diane came over to help me sort through his things. We went into his workshop, that garage workshop where he spent every evening for decades. The place I resented because I saw it as his escape from me, his avoidance, his way of saying he'd rather sand wood than sit with his wife. Diane opened the cabinets along the back wall, and she started pulling things out. A jewelry box, cherry wood, half finished. My initials were penciled on the inside of the lid in Walter's handwriting. A bookshelf, designed for Diane's living room. She'd mentioned once, years ago, that she needed one. Walter had measured her wall during a visit. She didn't know he'd been building it. A toy chest for Bobby's children. Carved edges, little animals on the sides. Unfinished. All of it unfinished. After he died, Diane showed me what he'd been building out there. A jewelry box for me, a bookshelf for her, a toy chest for the grandchildren. All unfinished, all love I never recognized. Walter had his own ledger, but his was made of wood, not resentment. He never said, "Look what I'm building for you." He never held it over anyone. He just went out to that garage every evening and worked on loving us in the only language he had. And I sat in this kitchen and told myself he was avoiding me. I never walked out to that workshop. Not once in 54 years did I go out there and say, "Walter, what are you working on?" Not once. Walter's way of dealing with me was to disappear into his workshop, into his silence. He wasn't blameless in this. He chose peace over honesty, and peace isn't always kind. If he'd pushed back, if he'd said, "Gloria, you're keeping score and it's destroying us," maybe things would have been different. Maybe not. But he didn't, and I didn't, and we both lost years to that silence. Number 7, and this is the hardest one, because this one is about looking in the mirror and not being able to blame anyone else. Choosing loneliness and then blaming everyone for it. After Patsy left, after Diane sat me down, after I looked around and realized the phone hadn't rung in 3 days, I did what I'd always done. I told myself it was them. They were ungrateful. They didn't understand what it's like to be 81 and alone. The world doesn't care about old women. My generation gave everything and got nothing back. I had a whole speech. I'd rehearsed it so many times it ran like a tape in my head. And every word of it was a lie. Because here's the thing about being alone when you're old. Sometimes the world does forget about you. That's real. But sometimes, and this is the part nobody wants to look at, sometimes you built the walls yourself, brick by brick, complaint by complaint, grudge by grudge, criticism by criticism, until one day you look up and you're standing inside a fortress of your own making, and everyone you love is on the other side, and you're yelling at them for not climbing over. I had all the evidence I needed that I was right and they were wrong. except the evidence kept telling me the same thing. I was alone. And the only common factor in every broken relationship in my life, Patsy, Bobby, the neighbours who stopped waving, the church friends who stopped inviting me to lunch, the only common factor was me. So I started trying. After Diane's talk, slowly, badly, I'd call Diane and catch myself about to lead with my knee pain, and I'd swallow it. Ask about the kids instead. I'd visit and watch her daughter eat cereal for dinner and clench my teeth so hard my jaw ached. But I didn't say a word. I let it go. It nearly killed me, but I let it go. And then, 3 months after Diane's talk, I picked up the phone and called Bobby. It rang 5 times. I almost hung up. Almost. My finger was on the button, but something in me, maybe Walter, maybe God, maybe just the last shred of a mother who wasn't ready to lose her son, something made me wait. He picked up. "Hey, Mum." That's all he said. Flat, careful. The voice of a man who'd been hurt enough times to keep his distance, even when he answers. There was a silence, a long one. The kind where you can hear someone breathing and you know they're deciding whether to stay on the line. And I said, "I'm sorry, Bobby, for all of it." I didn't list what I was sorry for. I didn't explain. I didn't make excuses. 6 words, that's all I had. He didn't say much, but he didn't hang up. And the next month he called me. Not a long call, 12 minutes maybe. He told me about a project at work. I listened. I didn't correct anything. I didn't offer advice. I just listened. And when he hung up, I sat at this table and cried harder than I cried at Walter's funeral. Because my son had given me 12 minutes, and I knew I didn't deserve them. You can't apologize and then expect everything to go back to how it was. That's not how trust works. You apologize because they deserve to hear it. What they do with it, that's their choice. Bobby calls once a month now. Short calls, careful, but real. And I'll take careful and real over nothing. Number 8, the last one. And I saved it for last because it's the one underneath all the others. Refusing to find joy. After Walter died, I decided my life was over. I was 77 years old. My husband was gone. My body hurt. My children were busy. And I told myself, I decided, that happiness was behind me. That the best I could hope for was getting through each day until there weren't any left. I wore my grief like armor. And underneath the grief was something worse. The belief that I didn't deserve to be happy anymore. That joy was for younger people, for people whose lives hadn't narrowed down to a kitchen table and a checkbook and a phone that didn't ring. 6 months ago, Diane signed me up for a watercolor class at the Thomasville Community Center. I told her I wasn't going. She said, "Mama, you're going. I already paid." That's Diane. She gets that stubbornness from me, except she uses it for good. So I went. I sat down at a long table with brushes and little cups of water and cheap paint that smelled like a kindergarten classroom. And the woman next to me was trying to paint a tree. I say trying with love. because it was the ugliest tree I have ever seen. Branches going in directions that no tree has ever grown. Leaves that looked like green thumbprints. The trunk was crooked. And this woman, Loretta Banks, 78 years old, hands swollen at the knuckles, holding that paintbrush like it owed her money. She leaned back, looked at her canvas and said, "Well, that's the ugliest tree in North Carolina." And she laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and doesn't care who hears it. I stared at her. Because Loretta had everything I had. She'd lost her husband 6 years ago. She had arthritis in both hands. Her son lived in Oregon, 3,000 miles away. She had every reason I had to sit in a dark house and catalogue her suffering. And there she was, painting a terrible tree and loving it. I picked up my brush. I painted something I don't even know what it was. Some kind of flower that looked more like a bruise. And I laughed. For the first time since Walter's funeral, a real laugh, the kind I'd forgotten I was capable of. And I whispered, so quiet I don't think Loretta heard me. There you are. I meant me. The version of myself that existed before the bitterness buried her. Before the grudges and the scorekeeping and the complaining and the need to control everything. Before I turned into a woman people dreaded visiting. She was still in there, under all of it. And she came back in a community centre classroom with cheap paint on her fingers and a terrible flower on her paper. Joy in old age isn't something that happens to you. It's something you decide, every morning. And I almost decided too late. Now I'm looking at you, and I know some of you are sitting where I sat. Maybe you've noticed the phone doesn't ring like it used to. Maybe your children visit out of obligation and leave early. Maybe your friends have gotten quieter, and you've been telling yourself it's them, it's the world, it's how things are now. I'm 81 years old and I am telling you, it might be you. That is not a cruel thing to say. That is the kindest thing anyone can tell you, because if it's you, you can change it. If it's the world, you're stuck. I'd rather it be me, because me I can fix. I'm not fixed. Let me be clear about that. Bobby still lives in Charlotte. Patsy never came back. I still catch myself mid-complaint and have to swallow the words. I still reach for Walter's coffee brand in the store and have to remind myself to try the new one. The habits don't die easy. They don't die at all, really. You just get better at catching them before they do their damage. But I paint bad watercolors on Wednesdays now. Loretta and I sit next to each other, and we make terrible art, and we laugh about it. I call Diane, and I ask about her life before I mention my knees. Bobby called last week, 15 minutes. He told me about a trip he's planning with Angela and the kids. I said, that sounds wonderful, and I meant it. I didn't ask why they weren't coming to see me instead. I just said it sounded wonderful. And last Tuesday I went to the grocery store, and I bought a different brand of coffee, Red Label, the one Walter picked up that day in 2012. Walter, you would have liked it. If this reached you today, if anything I said sounded familiar, share it with a woman who needs to hear it before it's too late. While she still has time to put the grudge down, while she still has people who are willing to pick up the phone. I almost ran out of time. Don't let that happen to you.